Welcome back to Spooky Screen. Today we'll be embarking on a 9-week long journey where we'll be reviewing the new HBO show, The Last of Us. So each week we'll be doing a new episode review the day after or 2 days after the premiere on Sundays, and we'll hopefully be helping you guys decide whether to keep watching this show or whether you should keep channel surfing. So with me are my hosts for tonight's discussion, Nick, David, Johnny, and Noah. And without further ado, we're going to dive right into it. So, The Last of Us is set 20 years into the future after a fungal pandemic has ravaged human civilization. Infected humans run rampant all across the world. And meanwhile, human survivors have formed violent factions, killing each other for food, weapons, and whatever else they can get their hands on. Joel, our world weary survivor hero, is hired to smuggle Ellie, a 14-year-old girl with a big secret, out from a dangerous quarantine zone. But what starts out as a quick job transforms into an epic journey across the United States, where Joel and Ellie will learn what it truly means to remain as the Last of Us. So, we're going to dive right into the discussions, but one important thing that I kind of wanted to sort out the way before we dive into the review was who has played the video games and who hasn't. Quick show of hands, who has played the video games? And Nick, could you kind of give me your I guess your opinion of the video games and like how that kind of factors into your perception of the show?
I am very excited for the show just because I love both the games in the series, one
Hmm.
and two. Absolute 10 out of 10, fantastic masterpiece in storytelling, especially for a video game. Um, to see it translate to a TV show, I heard this was going to be a movie a long time ago, and I got really excited. Then I heard it got bumped down to a TV show, and that kind of like bummed me out a little. But I was still very excited that there was going to be some kind of show or something about this that was not going to be the video game because it being a video game, I feel like limits its audience. And like I said, this game's a 10 out of 10, and everyone deserves to know like about the story this game tells.
10 out of 10, Nicholas. Noah, what about
100%.
you? What are your opinions of the game and how has that influenced your I guess your expectations for the show?
Yes. So I consider Last of Us parts 1 and 2 masterpieces. They're
Hmm.
both 10 out of 10s in my
Shots
Shots
fired.
fired.
I don't
opinion.
know. We're gonna have to have a conversation of words
It's okay.
after
Nope,
this.
nope,
It's
nope.
okay. Um and I too it's very strong source material for this video game adaptation, but I think like most of us who've played the game don't really need it because the video games are so good. But I'm glad that this exists, and I'm glad that it's in a TV show format instead of a movie format, because I think it really it really allows the story to be told, and I'm glad that so many other people get to experience it that wouldn't normally play the game. So
Great. All right. And I have also played the video games as well. And I will say I probably view both as masterpieces. Like, no, they're probably my favorite video games of all time. If I just kind of had to put that out there, but in terms of the show, I almost feel like because I enjoy the video game so much, the show kind of has to prove to me why it needed to exist. You know, and I think that it can definitely use TV as a medium to its own advantage, but I'm not going in with like stars in my eyes and expecting it to be um, like incredible from the get go. I'm like kind of viewing it with a little bit of a dose of skepticism. So that's kind of where I'm sitting heading into these episode reviews. So let's pivot. Let's go to the non gaming faction. Then Johnny and David, you have not played either of these games, right? Confirmed. Okay.
Yeah.
Confirmed. Roger.
Okay. And what do you like? I guess then knowing that you're not expecting, like, are you going in with no expectations at all? Or are there some expectations because you've heard some things about the video games, how great they are? Or, what are your thoughts? Johnny, why don't you go
Well,
first?
I mean, this is post episode 1.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I came in with no expectations other than knowing it was a zombie apocalypse movie.
Hmm.
I've enjoyed that genre before, right? I'm just saying. That's like, that's all I could think about it. The only thing that I'm mostly excited, and I'm still excited after watching the first episode. The only thing I was concerned about before all of this, and I don't know if it's been righted yet, but there's a general repetition to these stories that I'm hoping this breaks out of the mold. And so I can think of a handful of them. I'm not going to name them, but just there's many of these apocalypse disease stories, and I have big hopes for this. We're not there yet, but I think they set it up great. So without the game, we'll see if I'll want to play the game at the end of these 9 weeks.
Okay, so let's a little light review there, a little taste for what's to come from Johnny's
I
side.
haven't
But
given my review yet. That was
Alright.
my expectation review.
Okay, expectations, fair. David, what about you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm similar to Johnny. I've played maybe 10 minutes of the game once when I was at Noah's house.
Mm-hmm.
We are not the same, David.
No, but I don't know. I know the generalness of the story, but all of the particulars of what they're gonna adapt and all of the major scenes, I don't know anything about the real nitty gritty of the story. So I'm excited. I think me and Johnny are a little bit at an advantage because we're kind of experiencing the adaptation
Yeah.
fresh, and you guys are kind of anticipating, where we're just kind of enjoying the experience. And I do think this interesting contrast we got going on is going to be fun to talk about. But from what I've seen, I'm excited about the story, but I do have that trepidatious feeling that Johnny's talking about, zombie post-apocalyptic, The Road, Mad Max type stuff. There are tropes that I hope, because The Last of Us is so acclaimed, I hope that they either subvert them or do them a way where I'm oh my gosh, I've never seen it done that way or taken that way. But I am like Johnny, cautious. Is it just going to be rehashing of old stereotypes?
So let's dive into it then, Dave. Let's lead with you then about the episode 1. So,
Sure.
could you kind of take us through you've seen episode 1 now,
Yep.
what worked for you in this episode? Maybe things that didn't as well. If you could just be specific, the better it is for our audiences. So
I would say, as far as pilots go, I think this checked off all the boxes and then some of, for me, what a very good pilot episode is. It sets up the characters really nicely and clearly, where we can start to see their motivations and their kind of drive. And it set up antagonistic problems and obstacles that they might find, go in the future. We saw a little bit of the warring factions and kind of how the world works, but not enough to know all the details. I just thought this episode really worked for me. It set up the world clearly enough for me as a baseline, kind of novice, about knowing about the game.
So it's the world building that got you. Did it immerse you well enough that you were?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it was a really good balance of show and tell and then tell.
Mhm.
It was visually strong enough where I understood what was happening, and I didn't need an epilogue, or I didn't need an extensive narration to get me into it. I just felt like I was jumping into a good story, and I feel like it set the momentum.
Well, so it's a thumbs up from David. Let's go to Noah then.
Yes. So I really enjoyed the first episode, but that's because I really enjoyed the first game. And this first episode is pretty much a shot for shot recreation of the first hour or 2 hours of the game in terms of visuals, characters, structure. Everything is nearly the same. There's a few minor deviations, a few additions here and there, and a few things that were cut. And where that happened, where there were these minor deviations, I did enjoy what they added and what they removed, but it was pretty inconsequential to the rest of the story that they're telling, right? The meat of the story is beat for beat the same as the video game, which is fine. I love the video game, but it it kind of shows to me that this is not necessarily for me, right? It kind of gives a little bit of the message that this is more for the people that haven't played the video game to who will truly enjoy this. Because if they were doing it to the video game people, I think they would deviate a bit more. But
Well,
that's not the case.
Can I ask maybe a question built on that?
Yes.
What if you were to compare that hour between the mediums? Which did you enjoy more? I'm going to assume the game because it was your first experience.
Yeah, I would say the video game. I think they're different experiences, right? Because I can't really compare to the TV show because I know what happens, right? I've already done it, I already lived it, so it's hard for me to say that I enjoy the TV show more. I'm not saying the TV show's bad. I'm saying I really enjoyed the TV show. I'm just saying if you played the game already, you are going to watch the video game with a great budget, and the cast is fantastic. I love everyone that they casted. I will say that I love Pedro Pascal as Joel. I like the girl. I'm sorry, I don't know her name.
Fringe
And
girl.
I especially like the lady that they cast as Tess. She like it's almost like they 3D printed the character from the game. Like she sounds like her, she looks like her, she acts like her. Like it's amazing. You can tell they did their homework and they're treating the source material, which is a masterpiece in all our opinions, as like their Bible almost. And I commend that, right? I'm not saying I didn't like it. I love the episode. I'm just saying it didn't do anything new for me that I haven't already lived in the video game. I'll stop talking.
Johnny, what about you? Why don't you give us your opinions
Yeah,
as a non-gamer?
non-gamer. Love games, but I just never ended up playing this because I knew it was very story and I just didn't get into it. But with that said, I love HBO number one. And so I'll preface this like in my opinion right now, HBO just makes the best content
Boom,
every
agreed.
time. And I don't see it changing right now. With that said, I love the opening scene. I will say that. I that drew me in. I actually stopped and like had Adeline watch it with me.
The interview or the
The interview. I thought that was just so great, and it
Mhm.
was just like setting the premise, and it was just drew me in really quickly. So with that said, and all the early scenes I thought were pretty good. The episode I did like overall. I liked the premise. I liked the skew. You know, it's a little bit of a twist on some of the disease premise. And I like the twist because I really was starting to build an emotional attachment to the characters, and I like that there's twists in this that were unexpected, and that the show maybe has some more layers to it. Because again, I'm coming in blind,
Mhm.
quite literally blind. I know the name of the show, I know the major premise, probably like most people, but that's it. So I like that it didn't disappoint me on the episode, right? Like even the first episode, the overall world I thought so far is pretty compelling. I think there's a lot of room to grow, so I thought that was good. I really like the main character, and I like kind of the tension of his character being this veteran, hardcore person, but also this tender, kind of conscious pulling. You can see there's a little bit of tension under the skin, gave him some depth. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that evolves or it doesn't evolve or etc. I will say okay, I'll finish my likes, and I just want to say a couple things that I'm suspect on. I did like the what the disease does to people, and I won't say much more about it. But I thought the way that they executed that was pretty interesting
Mhm.
and exciting. I did not love the faction setup in the 20-year future yet. I have a lot of doubts. I don't want to get into it too much for anyone, but like I just the name, the setup, it feels too
Fireflies.
familiar.
You're talking about
It feels too
the
familiar to
yeah, you're
me.
talking
Yeah.
about the rebellion group, right?
Yeah, and it feels just very familiar to me, and I'm really hoping that it's not boring. And I actually will say this: I think it was too long the first episode. I think it was a little
90
too
minutes.
long.
90 minutes long,
Yeah,
yeah.
they could have tightened up dialogue. It felt a little bit too much like a drama, and it could have been more succinct.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I watched the whole thing. I enjoyed watching it all. Don't get me wrong, but it was it was like a lack of editing. It almost felt like they could if they had some hard talks, they could have tightened that up.
Feast rather than famine.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Johnny. Nick, give us your thoughts and I'll round us out.
So it's hard to give my opinion because Noah did a really good job, and I don't want to repeat him. But I will agree with him that in the sense that This episode was very much just about, like, I'd say a 90% shot for shot of the first. I'd say like it covers a good chunk of the beginning of the game. Honestly, this hour and a half probably covers. I'd say probably about like 3 hours of gameplay. You get to like at least like the halfway through the second chapter of the game, and I think there's only like what 6 or 7, if I remember correctly. So it covered a good chunk. That was my biggest fear going into this. I know we talked about how maybe it should end halfway through the story, or maybe it should just end the entire game at the end of the series. And I was very suspect about that. I was like, I don't think they're going to have enough time. But I'm very confident that they can do that, because I very much appreciated the fact that in adapting a video game, it's very hard to choose, and adapting anything even, it's very hard to choose what's really important and the things that you can just throw away because they're not as important. And I think this game did a fantastic job, because this is the kind of game where everything's important, and they took everything and they were like, we're just gonna make sure everything except for the part that where you walk around exploring is going to be what we give you on TV. And that's a very, very fine line to walk, and I think they do that phenomenally. There's no wasted time. I will agree with Johnny that the episode does seem a bit long. You did feel the runtime, but I don't think there was any wasted time in that. It was just a lot to throw at you all at one time, in terms of character, world building, story, meeting, like introducing a
Yeah,
cast.
that might
It
be
did
true.
it did a lot in its 90 minutes, but it did it very well. Um, I'm very excited to see where this is going. My biggest fear at this point is it can only go down from here. Uh, and I don't want a Mandalorian myself, you know.
Boba
Um,
Fett yourself.
Boba Fett, was it Boba Fett? Yeah, it was Boba Fett. You're right.
What if they just do a huge pivot, and they just totally depart, and then just like everyone's like, "What?"
I found myself reciting moments from the game, like when they were saying one line, I was able to complete it. I was having so much fun and enjoying myself so hard watching this. I was nerding out so much, and I love being able to just be so excited, like giddy like a child, as I'm watching something and be so excited about it.
No. So Nick, you're a little bit more enthusiastic than no. I think you took away a little bit more from the viewing experience than he did. All right, like your
Yeah,
excitement level will probably be like up here versus Noah's, which is down here. Well, not down here, but like kind of in the
I have
middle.
my
You know?
perspective changed. How about that? I now
Yeah.
view it as someone that's trying to view it through other people's eyes.
Right. Exactly.
I'm taking
Yeah.
enjoyment in the fact that David and Johnny are watching it for the first time and they get to share in the experience.
Yeah,
Right. But I
exactly.
loved so much. I'm now getting to share it with them because they would have never been able
Yeah.
to do that.
And Nick,
And I,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead, Noah.
No,
No, go ahead, Noah.
No, I was just saying, like, I just think it's amazing that a video game wrote dialogue that was so brilliant and cutting and relevant that it ended up in an HBO Max TV show,
Right. That's
like word for word, like
Mhm.
right. Like the game script is the actual TV show script.
like I was like,
Yeah.
that's props to the people that made the video game.
And even the cut screens too. Some of the cut screens.
Wow.
Yeah.
I won't spoil for our viewers, but yeah, some of them were just like I was literally seeing the video game. I felt like I was holding a PlayStation controller in my hand as I was watching the show at some points. And Nick, your thing about like them just kind of like focusing on the cutscenes for this show just like reminds me, like, I hope they have like 40 hours of behind the scenes, well, not 40 hours of cut footage where they're just literally like opening shelves.
Right.
And just like
empty shelf.
crafting together shivs
Right.
and med packs. Like it's literally just 40 hours of that. It's like a
There was a part actually where they're gearing up and Joel grabs his book bag, he throws it on the ground, and he makes sure he has his items. And I looked at
Yeah.
Katrina and I was like, he's in his pause menu right now. He's making sure he's ready to go.
He grabbed his wrench.
Yeah.
So I'm also similar to Noah. I was watching the show and I was like, as a hardcore video game enthusiast, I was like, this is living up to my expectations for what it was going to be from a video game perspective, because it's literally taking shots from the video game and just composing them in real life settings. And I thought that was really well done. But I felt like, for me, I was a little bit excited for the moments where they would kind of stray from the script and see what sort of flourishes and creative things that they could do that would set them apart from the video game. And so, like, there was one creative decision in this episode that chose to spend a lot of time with one of the characters that, you know, the video game didn't spend a lot of time focusing on, and I thought that
Mhm.
was done very well, and it actually added to the story rather than take away from it.
Mhm.
And I just thought that it set up a comparison between one relationship and then another by the end of the episode. And again, we can talk about this in our spoiler section, but there were just these little differences that added up, and I hope to see more of that as we go forward into future episodes. Um, I I also think that, you know, the casting was fantastic. Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, right? That was her. Bella Ramsey, I think is her name. So
Mhm.
Bella Ramsey, and then Anna Torv, who was in Fringe as Tess. Like you said, very very inspired casting, and I think
Mhm.
that they did a great job with it. Even Marlene looked uncanny.
Oh my
Um,
god, and they
Oh,
sound like them too. It's
yeah,
amazing.
actually, if
yeah.
I may, the lady who plays Marlene is actually the woman from the game.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say.
yeah, yeah,
I saw the extras and I was like, oh,
yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah,
So
they
that makes
actually took
sense.
her.
And then the last thing I just want to kind of throw kudos to is the set design. Like to design a post-apocalyptic world in Boston and knowing what else is to come,
Mhm.
seeing how they nailed Boston and just knowing the crazier sets that are going to be coming the weeks ahead, I'm like, wow, this team really had their work cut out for them and they delivered. And I just kind of have to give them their flowers. They did a great job with the setting and
Mhm.
just how the end of the episode, you see something flashing in the lightning, and I'm like, yep, I know exactly where we're headed in the video
Yeah,
game, and it just kind of sets up that anticipation. So
Mhm.
I enjoyed episode one. I hope that, you know, ultimately they do take advantage of the TV as a medium versus video game as a medium, and kind of really turn that dial up to max. And I think that's how the show is going to ultimately set itself apart from the video game and kind of stand on its own as well. So that's what I would want to see in the next 8 weeks. So
Mhm.
yeah. So I think, yeah. So it sounds like, you know, most of us are really digging the show. Episode one, all of us have given it our thumbs up. We do have some like subtle hesitations or I guess reservations about where the series is headed, but nothing that will keep us from watching. So I think then, honestly, it seems like everyone is pretty much on board for
It's a
season one.
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5.
Can I say one thing though?
Yeah, go for it. No.
Can I just say one thing that bugged me?
Yeah.
Oh,
What bugged you?
there it is.
Hmm. The one thing that bugged me that felt like a big change from the video game was, we'll just say spoilers, I guess. I don't know how.
Another spoiler
No
alert
spoiler alert.
for
I
the
guess
Yeah.
viewers
another
who
I
don't
don't
Does
know.
know
it
if
does
it's
it ruin it?
considered. I don't consider. No, not
It's probably a
it's in
spoiler.
it's contained within the episode.
Okay.
It's how the infected were portrayed. I don't know if it bugged any of the other people that played the video game, but it seemed to me like they were more subdued than when you encounter them, and they had this weird fungus thing coming out of their mouth. It looked like, maybe
Hmm.
I'm crazy.
I saw
That
it.
seemed like an addition that was not in the video game, and it and they were like rubbing it on people, like instead of like biting like zombies or like beating like they do in the game. And I didn't like that. Like it took away from it. Like the video game felt more like chaotic brutality. You know, it was like this just rage, just utter rage, and this felt way more like calculated. Like they
Yeah.
were just trying to infect people, and I don't know if I like that. Like it kind of took away a lot from it for me. That
Hmm.
was like the one thing that stood out. Like I was like, ooh, I don't know if I dig this.
I did notice that approach.
Like a
So
hive mind.
I didn't know that it's different, but I did notice like it seemed like calculated infection,
Hmm.
like,
And
you know,
and that
focused work rather than just kind of evolutionary byproduct and rage and
Yeah, and
yeah, and
they hinted at that with the interview where he was saying what
yeah.
like one objective, which is to infect every single person in the world,
Mhm.
right? So it's more, it seemed more intentional in its objectives versus like what
but
Noah was saying.
but as like a visual execution, it just doesn't really work as well in terms of like an apocalypse, in my opinion. It feels a little more, it feels a little weird, feels a
Mhm.
little off. And what I want to say is that I'm a concerned
Citizen.
because I'm a concerned citizen because what David and Johnny brought up, right, is the tropes, the countless tropes, the 17 or 70 seasons of Walking Dead that we've had before Last of Us could come out. Like, I'm
I was
afraid
gonna
the
mention the show.
showrunners are like, zombies have been done before, like the rage zombies, the like that visualness has been done, right?
Mhm.
Those stereotypes, those tropes, those scenes have been done. We have to do something different. And I don't think they should. I think they should stick to their guns, to what they knew worked in the video game, and they shouldn't worry about what people think of the tropes of repeating those. Because I think what they've done so far is they have differentiated themselves. I'm just afraid that they're continually going to try and make those subtle changes that are just going to pull away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a valid concern to raise as we head into the next 8 weeks, and it's something that we'll look out for in our future discussions.
We'll keep an eye out.
Yeah,
Keep
we'll
an
keep an
eye
eye
out.
out. We'll
For
be
everyone who
we'll
wants to
be
join.
vigilant citizens, neighborhood watchers. Anyways, that's it. Episode 1 is now in the books, so we're gonna look ahead to next Sunday where episode 2 premieres on HBO. This is a review
So
of
it's
the
weekly, right? It's a weekly.
It's a
Every
weekly
Sunday.
I
review.
really
Yeah.
wish they would do a batch release so I could watch them.
Yeah, you streamer.
Oh.
Yeah, I
you
wanted to
binger.
jump right into the second episode. I was like,
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be back next week. This will be a weekly review. So I want to thank my hosts, Nick, David, Johnny,
Plug
Noah,
the show.
for joining us, and we look forward to discussing more
Plug the
episodes
show.
with you. This is the Spooky Screen. Subscribe, as it says right here in the bottom, to us on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, wherever we're existing, and we'll see you next
Like
week.
the
for episode
video.
2. Like the video,
Please like the
comment.
video.
Tell us what you think after you've seen episode 1. Yeah, give us your thoughts.
If you like what you heard, ring the bell.
Thanks for tuning in. This is the Spooky Screen. Peace out.